In fact, let's look at this idea. How many years in a century? 100. How many pennies, how many cents in a dollar? 100. This word cent means 100. Okay. The root word. What did we say the word per meant? Miles per hour. Per means divided by, doesn't it? So literally, the word per cent means divided by 100. That's what the word literally means, divided by 100. So if I say, give me 30%, let me make it more generous. If I say, I'll give you 30% of my land, that means if you divide my land into 100 pieces, I'm going to give you 30 of them. Okay? For every 100 pieces, I'm going to give you 30. I'm going to give you 30 divided by 100. That's how much of my land I'm going to give you. And if we reduce that fraction, what is that? Yeah. Divide the numerator and denominator by 10, knock off a 0. 30 hundredths is the same as 3/10, isn't it? Okay, so here's a percent, but it's really exactly the same as that fraction, isn't it? And how would we write this as a decimal? 3/10. 0.3, wouldn't it? Okay. Now, I strongly suggest that anytime you write a decimal that's less than 1, put that being 0 on it, because it's really easy to think that's a 3 and not notice the decimal point. But if there's a 0 in front of it, that alerts us right away, because normally numbers don't have 0 in front of them. Okay? So here's a decimal. It's exactly the same amount as this fraction, which is exactly the same amount as this percent, isn't it? Now, how do we change a percent to a decimal? We have a little shortcut, don't we? If I say 0.3 is what percent? Well, the shortcut is move the decimal 2 places to the right, isn't it? Now, here's where we have to be careful. When I move the decimal 2 places to the right, did I change that number? Is 0.3 the same as moving it 2 places to the right? Is this number the same as 30? 0.3, if you think it's the same,
Not let's go percent.
you owe me 30 cents, pay me $30, we'll call it even. Okay, they're not the same. This thing's 100 times bigger than that. Because when we move the decimal 1 place to the right, we multiply something by 10. No. When we move it another place, we multiply by 10 again. So when we move the decimal 2 places to the right, we just multiply that stuff by 100. All right? So how can 0.3 be the same as 30? It's not the same as 30. But if I put the percent after it, I've just multiplied it by 100, and now I'm going to divide it by 100. If you multiply something by 100, then you divide it by 100, you've left it the same, haven't you? So 0.3 is not the same as 30, but it is the same as 30%. Okay? So be really careful. And going the other way, if I said 43% is what decimal, we would move it 2 places to the left. Well, 43 is not the same as 0.43, is it? 43% is not the same as 0.43%. This thing's 100 times as big. But if I'll drop that percent sign, I just undivide it by 100. I just multiply it by 100. So now they are the same. Okay. All right, so to change the decimal to a percent, we move it 2 places to the right and add the percent sign. To change a percent to a decimal, we move it 2 places to the left. Now, an easy way to remember, decimal begins with D, percent begins with P. Alphabetically, this one's to the left of that. So if you're going from D to P, you're going to the right. If you're going from P back to D, you're going to the left. That's one way to remember. All right, how does that feel? changing a decimal to a percent. Now, here's what's going to be on the test. I'm going to have 3 columns. One will be a fraction, one will be a decimal, one will be a percent. And I'm going to have something in one of those columns, and you're going to have to fill in the other 2 columns. So let's do some examples like that. Let's say we have the fraction 3/4. 3/4. Now, what if I didn't know what that was as a decimal? What could I do on my calculator? I could punch in 3 divided by 4 equals, and it would tell me what the decimal equivalent of that is, wouldn't it? So just try it. Punch in 3 divided by 4. It's always top divided by bottom equals. Should say 0.75. Okay? So 3 divided by 4, that's what that horizontal line means, is 0.75. And how do we change a decimal to a percent? 2 places to the right. Okay, so that's 75%. All right, what if we had a decimal that was 6.34? That's going to be nasty. Let's do 6.35. What the heck? Live dangerously. Well, it's going to be a lot easier to change to a percent than it is to a fraction, isn't it? So let's do that first. Which way do we move the decimal point? To the right. So 6.35 is actually 635%, isn't it? Now, here's something that's good in math, that's good in all of life. When in doubt, remind yourself of something that you know is true. When in doubt, remind yourself of something you know is true. 1% is what as a decimal? It's 0.01, isn't it? The whole number 1 is what as a percent? It's 100%, isn't it? If I have 1 pizza, I have 100% of that pizza. Okay? So if I've got 5 pizzas, I've got 500% of that pizza. Okay? Because it's 5 of them. So if I've got 6 of something, it makes sense that it should be over 600%, shouldn't it? So sometimes it helps to remind ourselves what range we're in. All right, let's do this fraction. Now, there's 3 ways we can look at percent. Percent, we said, means divided by 100, doesn't it? Well, here's 635%. 635 divided by 100. Sound like a fraction to me, doesn't it? 635 divided by 100. That's the fractional equivalent of that. Now, that's not in its lowest terms, is it? Because there's something into the 5, we know it's divisible by what? By 5. Something into the 0, it's also divisible by 5, isn't it? So we know that 5 is going to divide both of those. So let's divide the top one by 5. Does that look right? And the bottom one? Now the only things that divide into this are 2 and 5. 2 times 2 times 5. 2 doesn't go into that. 5 doesn't go into that. So that's it. All right. That's the lowest form that we can get at. Why do we reduce fractions? Well, there's a real practical reason. What if you got this answer and someone else in the class got this answer, and someone else in the class got this answer, and someone else in the class got this answer? it would look like we all got different answers. But they're really all the same, aren't they? But we wouldn't know that unless we reduced them all. Then we'd all end up with this same thing. So that's the practical reason for reducing the fraction, so that we know that it's the same as this other reduced fraction. So on the test, if you put 635 over 100, I give you half credit. But if you reduce it, I'll give you full credit. Okay. All right, let's do another one. Let's see, we started with a fraction, then we started with a decimal. Now let's do a percent. .7%. Now again, let's figure out what range we're in. Is that more or less than 1%? Is 0.7 more or less than 1? It's less. 0.7 is less than 1. So 0.7% is less than 1%. So if 1% is 0.01, then this thing needs to be smaller than that, right? So we go 2 places to the left, and we get 0.007, which indeed is smaller than 0.01. Okay. This is a tiny number. This is a fraction of a percent. Now let's figure out how we change it to a fraction. How do we read this number? We read it as 7 tenths, hundredths, thousandths. We read that decimal as 7 thousandths. Well, there's a fraction that is 7 thousandths, isn't it? Now, there's kind of an easy little shortcut. You take this number, whatever it is, you put it on the top of the fraction. Then you stick a 1 under it, and then you count how many decimal places you have. How many decimal places do we have here? 3. That's how many zeros you stick after the 1. That keeps you from having to say tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s. You just put the number on top, stick a 1 there, and put however many zeros after the 1 as there are decimal places. So I'll give you fractions, decimals, and percents, and you'll need to convert them to the other 2 things. Okay, let's do one more thing, and we'll be done.